Imagine you are the CEO of a major multi-million-dollar industrial plant. It is like the middle of the night, and you get this frantic, urgent call from your security team.
Oh, that is never a good call to get.
Right, never. So you rush in, they pull up the CCTV footage, and you watch, clear as day as an entity, something undeniably non-human, something that completely defies all known laws of biology and physics, just wanders casually through your facility.
I mean, my brain would just short circuit.
Exactly. So what do? Do you call the news? Do you call the military? Well, if you are today's subject, a man named Osman, you do the exact opposite. You look at the CEO, you draft strict confidentiality agreements, and you permanently bury that footage.
Which sounds crazy at first, but his reasoning is fascinating.
Yeah, because as terrifying as an alien entity might be, he realizes that human panic, superstition, and the absolute collapse of your workforce are just far, far more dangerous.
It is a phenomenal starting point for us because it immediately forces us to confront our own, psychological fragility. We really like to think of ourselves as this highly evolved, rational species.
Oh, totally. We want everything in a neat little box.
Exactly. We want the world to fit perfectly into the spectrum of what we can perceive with our own two eyes. But when we're confronted with something that shatters that paradigm, our first instinct isn't scientific inquiry, it's just pure, unadulterated panic.
And that panic, that inherent human fear of the unseen, is exactly what we are dismantling today on this deep dive. We are asking you, the listener, a central, highly controversial question. In a modern scientific world, is it inherently wrong or anti-rational to seek help from unseen, higher-frequency beings?
Which is a question that instantly makes people squirm, right? We're talking about multidimensional entities, energy healing, spiritual hierarchies, ancient mysticism.
Yeah, the stuff that usually gets you weird looks at dinner parties.
Exactly. But our goal today is not to ask you to blindly believe in magic or abandon your critical thinking. Far from it. Our mission today is to take a highly unique, multidisciplinary framework and examine it strictly through the lenses of human psychology, energy dynamics, and grounded pragmatism. We are looking for the actual mechanics.
Right. We are acting as your guides through an incredibly dense, fascinating source.
Yeah.
Our foundational text for this entire deep dive is a comprehensive video lecture from Osman, who is widely known internationally as the blind Muslim yogi. And I promise you, his perspective is going to rip the hinges off whatever door you currently have, separating the physical from the spiritual.
It really does.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because we cannot possibly evaluate Osman's claims without understanding the biological and historical reality of the man making them.
You really can't separate the messenger from the message here. His physical reality is literally the crucible for his entire philosophy.
Right. So according to the source material, Osman is a 57-year-old bioenergy healer. But we need to define what that actually means in his context, because he isn't just, waving his hands over crystals at a weekend retreat.
No, not at all.
He operates at a master level. He specializes in telepathic healing capabilities using the principles of quantum and entanglement, and he specifically targets critical care recovery and terminal illnesses.
He is stepping into arenas where traditional biology is failing, the most intense, energetic crises a human body can endure.
Exactly. He has practiced healing, as well as advanced yoga and meditation, for 50 years. He actually attained his first samadhi experience by the age of 19.
Which is incredibly rare.
Yeah, and his practice was rigorous. We are talking about practicing up to 18 hours a day in certain stages of his life. And even now, he practices a minimum of 8 to 10 hours a day, just, as he puts it, sharpening the sword.
Which explains the uncommon ability to heal on such serious levels with incredibly high success rates.
Right, and it's why his treatments and consultation fees are, well, not inexpensive. They are a premium service at a premium price. But here is the detail that completely rewired how I approach his lecture. Osman lost his physical sight completely 3 years ago, at the age of 54.
And we really have to pause and look at the neurological implications of that. For 54 years, he processed reality like the rest of us do, through the dominant, overwhelming flood of visual data.
Right, the eyes take up so much bandwidth.
So much bandwidth. The human visual cortex consumes a staggering amount of our brain's processing power. It is an energy hog. But Osman states something profound here. He claims that now, entirely blind, he can see better with his mind's eye, or what he calls his eye of wisdom, than the vast majority of sighted people.
Which initially sounds like a poetic coping mechanism, right? But is there actual science to back up that kind of heightened secondary perception?
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture of neuroplasticity, it is an established biological fact. Andrew Huberman actually talks about this kind of thing all the time on the Huberman Lab podcast.
Oh yeah, he's great at explaining that stuff.
Yeah, like in his episode with Dr. David Spiegel, they discuss how hypnosis and the mind-body connection physically alter brain states. Or when Huberman talked with Dr. Matthew Walker about brain plasticity during sleep. When you completely sever visual stimuli, the brain doesn't just leave that processing power dormant, it reroutes it.
It finds a new pathway.
Exactly. It heightens auditory processing, tactile sensitivity, and spatial awareness. But Osman is claiming a step beyond standard neuroplasticity. He is arguing for energetic plasticity.
Wait, explain that a bit more.
He is suggesting that physical eyes actually act as a filter. They lock our consciousness onto dense matter. When that physical filter is destroyed, the mind is suddenly liberated to perceive the subtle frequencies and energies that actually animate the matter. It's like the ultimate permanent sensory deprivation tank, and it has radically amplified his sensitivity to the unseen.
That makes total sense. And it reminds me of an episode of the Mel Robbins podcast. Mel was talking with Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor, the neuroanatomist who had a stroke that shut down her left brain hemisphere.
Oh, I remember that one.
Right. And Dr. Taylor described how when the analytical boundary-focused part of her brain went offline, she suddenly experienced this vast mystical connection to the energy of everything around her. It was a biological shift that triggered a spiritual awakening.
Which perfectly parallels what Osman is talking about.
And he brings an incredibly rigorous global education to that heightened sensitivity. He didn't just meditate in a cave by himself. The source material highlights that he studied extensively and widely from various schools of thought from the Far East, the Middle East, and the West, specifically looking for the scientific approaches available.
He is relentlessly pragmatic. His mission is to encourage as many people as possible into a scientific approach with a result-based, simplified methodology drawn from ancient yoga and meditation sciences.
Right. He wants to strip away all the cultural dogma, the superstitious fluff, and leave behind only fast protocols that a modern person can actually use to improve their health, peace of mind, relationships, and finances.
And because he is so focused on utility, he actually provides an incredible resource for you listening right now. He offers a highly refined, free 5-minute yoga and meditation program online. It's designed specifically for immediate, tangible results.
Yes. You can find it at his website, yogawellness786.com. That's yogawellness, the number 786.com.
And we should make it unequivocally clear, as he does in his lectures, that these energetic therapies are offered on a complementary basis. They're not a replacement for the medical fields, but something to enhance whatever is lacking in traditional medicine.
Exactly. If you have a broken leg, go to the hospital. If your energetic recovery is stalling, that's where his protocols step in. And for those who want to go deeper, he has a Patreon channel accessed through his website for paid live daily video lessons, one-to-one consultations, and group sessions. But he also emphasizes that he doesn't withhold information. You can find massive amounts of free, unique advice and techniques on his YouTube channel, or listen to his deep dives on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under The Blind Muslim Yogi.
It's a crucial distinction. It proves he isn't rejecting the material world. He's advocating for a complete, holistic utilization of all available tools.
But I'm not going to lie, when I first started digging into this, my skeptical alarms were ringing. You hear 50 years of practice, telepathic healing, multidimensional entities, and the modern brain just kind of shuts down. We are so conditioned to demand peer-reviewed, double-blind clinical trials for literally everything.
It's incredibly easy to dismiss him.
It is. But the deeper I got, the more I realized, what if we are dismissing him simply because we don't understand the physics yet? What if this isn't magic? It's just a mechanism we haven't mapped.
This raises an important question, and it acts as the perfect bridge into Osman's core logical argument. Because to understand how he maps the unseen world, we first have to look at how we behave in the physical world. How do you and I handle problems that completely exceed our personal capacity?
Yes, and this brings us to his brilliant dismantling of a massive theological debate. There's this pervasive idea across many religions that invoking a deity, an angel, or an unseen helper is a fundamental betrayal of God. It's labeled as worshiping idols. Osman tackles this head-on with an analogy that is so brutally simple it's hard to argue with. He calls it the doctor analogy.
He starts with a visceral, everyday nightmare. Imagine your 9-month-old infant suddenly spikes 104-degree fever. They are deathly ill. What is your immediate action? Do you drop to your knees, pray exclusively to the ultimate creator of the cosmos, refuse all human intervention, and just wait?
No. Obviously not. If you're a rational human being, you grab your keys and rush to a doctor. And if the general practitioner is stumped, they refer you to a highly specialized pediatrician. Osman then asks the kill shot question. By driving to that pediatrician and begging them to save your child, are you worshiping that pediatrician as a god?
Right. And the answer is obviously no. You are simply engaging in cognitive and practical offloading.
You are recognizing a deficit in your own ability.
Exactly. You are outsourcing the solution to someone who has spent decades acquiring specialized knowledge. Going to a mechanic when your car breaks down, whether it's a specialized Tesla or Toyota service center, doesn't mean you view that mechanic as the supreme architect of the universe. It means they have the specific tools for a specific frequency of problem.
Osman applies this exact, undeniable logic to the spiritual realm. He does the same thing with the university professor. If you want to learn quantum mechanics, you don't just pray for the knowledge to spontaneously materialize in your brain. You enroll in a course. You sit in a lecture hall. You submit to the authority and guidance of a professor. You aren't worshiping them. You are leveraging their specialized mastery to elevate your own understanding.
This is actually something Stephen Bartlett touches on a lot in The Diary of a CEO.
Oh, right, with his guests on mindset and spirituality.
Yeah. Think about his episode with Mo Godot on the logic of happiness and spirituality, or his massive interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza about the mind-body connection. Dispenza constantly talks about how we need to learn the specific mechanics of the quantum field to heal ourselves. We have to study under people who have mapped the territory.
Lewis Howes talks about this on The School of Greatness too, right?
Oh, constantly. Especially in his episodes with Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is huge on this. If you want to master something, find an expert who has already achieved it and model their behavior. You don't reinvent the wheel, you find the master.
And as the great mystic Rumi, or even Vivekananda would say, the seeker must find the right guide to traverse the unknown. So if we synthesize this, Osman is fundamentally challenging the architecture of how we view the universe. Most people view reality as a binary. There's a monolithic, unreachable God at the very top, humans struggling at the very bottom, and millions of miles of empty, sterile vacuum in between.
Right, just empty space.
Yeah. But Osman is saying, absolutely not. The space between us and the ultimate creator is not empty. It is a bustling, teeming, infinitely complex ecosystem. It is a cosmic org chart filled with specialized helpers, entities, and frequencies, all managing their own specific departments of reality.
So it's an entire unseen society based on specialization and delegation. Just as you delegate your plumbing to a plumber to avoid destroying your house, the universe delegates energetic management to specific entities to maintain cosmic order.
But if we accept this massive cosmic org chart, it begs a physical question. How does a human actually get promoted within it? How do you tap into that hierarchy? Because Osman talks extensively about the timeline of spiritual maturation, and the sheer scale of it is terrifying. He brings up the famous historical case of Gopi Krishna.
We really need to explain who Gopi Krishna is for this to land, and more importantly, explain what he was trying to achieve. Gopi Krishna was a 20th century Indian mystic who documented in agonizing detail his experience with Kundalini awakening.
Let's explain that for a second, because Kundalini is one of those terms that gets thrown around in yoga studios with like zero context. What is it, biologically speaking, in this framework?
In these ancient esoteric traditions, Kundalini is described as a massive reserve of dormant, highly concentrated evolutionary energy resting at the base of the human spine. Biologically, modern theorists often link it to the vagus nerve, cerebrospinal fluid, and the central nervous system. When this energy is awakened or triggered, it travels up the spinal column, effectively detonating inside the brain.
So it's not just a relaxing stretch.
Oh no, it is the energetic equivalent of taking a nervous system wired for 110 volts and suddenly blasting 22,000 volts through it. Rick Archer actually explores this deeply on his podcast, Buddha at the Gas Pump.
I love that show. He interviews so many fascinating people.
He really does. He did a fantastic episode with Dr. Bonnie Greenwell, who is a transpersonal psychotherapist specializing in Kundalini awakenings. Dr. Greenwell talked about how these awakenings can look like severe psychological crises if the person isn't prepared. And Rick also had Swami Sarvapriyananda on to discuss the Advaita Vedanta perspective of navigating these intense shifts in consciousness.
And that perfectly explains the timeline Osman references. He points out that it took Gopi Krishna 17 straight years of grueling, isolated meditation just to trigger his first Kundalini experience. And when it hit, it nearly killed him.
Because he wasn't biologically prepared for the voltage.
Exactly. He was physically devastated, mentally destabilized, and basically teetering on the edge of madness because his physical neurology simply couldn't handle the frequency. It took him another 15 years of agonizing maturation just to stabilize that energy. That is 34 years of total systemic rewiring to reach a state of enlightenment.
A literal lifetime consumed by a dangerous, unpredictable internal physics experiment. And if you read Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, or look at the life of Ramakrishna, you see these intense, decades-long struggles to manage these divine energies.
And Osman is radically transparent about his own timeline, too. He didn't snap his fingers and become a master. He states that it took him 40 years to fully understand and control his own Kundalini. His initial awakening happened a decade into his practice, and then he spent the next 30 years as a human guinea pig, figuring out the mechanics, how to cool the nervous system, how to direct the flow, how to survive the voltage.
But here is where we get to the core of Osman's life mission. He survived that 40-year gauntlet. And because he spent those decades endlessly cross-referencing Middle Eastern Sufism, Far Eastern Yoga, and Western bioenergetics, he claims to have decoded the underlying machinery. He isolated the variables.
Wait, hold on. This is where I struggle. Gopi Krishna almost went insane over 34 years trying to manage this. Osman took 40 years of practicing up to 18 hours a day. But in the source material, Osman claims that his mission is to create a result-based, simplified methodology. How does he bypass the neurological meltdown for everyday people?
It's the perfect question, and it requires a mechanistic analogy. Think about the evolution of computer programming. Look at the software engineers in the 1960s. They spent decades working with punch cards, writing binary code by hand, agonizing over every single kilobyte of memory to build a rudimentary operating system. It was grueling, highly specialized, painfully slow work.
Right.
But they did it so that today you don't have to know a single line of code. You just tap a beautifully designed icon on your smartphone, and a massively complex app runs flawlessly in 3 seconds.
Oh, wow. So Osman is acting as the user interface.
Exactly. Osman spent 40 years writing the energetic code. He mapped the dead ends, the neurological short circuits, and the exact sequence of breath and focus required to bypass the danger zones. When he works with people now, he isn't teaching them to write the code from scratch. He is simply installing the optimized software. He is offering the app version of ancient Kundalini science. He acts as a localized energetic transformer, stepping down the voltage so the student's nervous system can safely integrate it.
That makes total sense. He's the bridge. And he points out that there are other, even more massive transformers operating on the planet right now. He brings up Sadhguru as an example of a human who operates at the absolute peak of this visible hierarchy.
Which is a great example.
Yeah, Osman notes that Sadhguru has the energetic capacity to mass initiate thousands of people in an auditorium simultaneously. Ranveer Alabadia actually talked about this exact phenomenon on his podcast, The Ranveer Show, also known as Beer Biceps. He had Sadhguru on, and they discussed the intense mysticism and energy required for that kind of mass initiation. Ranveer also had Swami Mukundananda on to discuss mind management and these higher states of being.
And what's fascinating here is how Osman categorizes Sadhguru philosophically. Despite wielding that terrifying level of influence over thousands of human nervous systems at once, Sadhguru does not claim to be the ultimate creator. Osman observes that Sadhguru operates on the Advaita principle.
Let's define Advaita again, because it's crucial here.
Right. Advaita is a Sanskrit term that translates to not two or non-dualism. It is the philosophical realization that the separation between the observer and the observed, between the human and the divine, is ultimately an illusion. It points to a singular, underlying reality that completely defies human categorization.
So Sadhguru isn't playing the role of a separate, distinct God-demanding worship.
Exactly. He operates as an integrated node within the whole. He is an exceptionally powerful guide, but still ultimately a component of the ecosystem.
But if Sadhguru is the upper management we can see, the natural question is, where are the executives? What happens when we push past the visible hierarchy? Osman argues that our sheer biological arrogance prevents us from seeing the rest of the org chart.
Yes, Osman starts his exploration of the unseen by deeply humbling human biology. We walk around this planet utterly convinced that what we see, hear, and touch constitutes the totality of objective reality. But it is a physiological lie.
It's a massive blind spot. He points out the animal kingdom. Bees navigate the world using ultraviolet light that our eyes physically cannot register. Owls have retinas designed to extract perfect visual data in the pitch black. Cats and dogs experience auditory and olfactory landscapes that make human senses look pathetic. We are stumbling around completely blind and deaf to massive swaths of the physical data interacting with our bodies every single second.
If we accept that a dog reacts to a high-frequency whistle that we literally cannot hear, it forces a logical concession. Why is it so inherently ridiculous to suggest that the universe is teeming with even higher energetic frequencies, inhabited by intelligent constructs, that our limited primate nervous systems simply lack the biological hardware to decode?
And he doesn't just leave it at biology. He bridges right into theoretical physics. He argues that modern science is actively proving the mystic worldview. He points to quantum physics concepts like quantum entanglement, where particles interact instantaneously across vast distances, defying the speed of light, which, by the way, is a principle he uses in his telepathic healing.
He specifically highlights the work of researchers like Billy Carson, the founder of Forbidden Knowledge. Carson spends his life synthesizing ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, and Vedic texts with modern astrophysics and quantum mechanics.
Joe Rogan actually had Billy Carson on the Joe Rogan Experience recently, and they went deep into this. They explored the theory that what ancient people called angels or gods were simply higher frequency, multidimensional beings moving in and out of our limited 3D slice of reality.
Rogan loves that intersection of science and the unseen. He had Paul Stamets on to talk about how mycelium networks act as this invisible, intelligent, underground nervous system for the planet. And his episodes with Duncan Trussell always dive into deep mysticism.
Right. Osman is basically arguing that the scientific method isn't destroying the spiritual realm, it's finally developing the mathematical vocabulary to explain it. Which brings us back to the story I opened the show with, the industrial plant. Because Osman isn't just theorizing about these entities on a chalkboard, he claims he caught one on camera.
Let's look deeper at the psychology of that incident. Osman is a senior manager at this plant. The security cameras capture footage of non-human entities. He and the CEO review the tape, and they bury it.
When I first heard that, I immediately thought, okay, this is where it devolves into a classic UFO conspiracy theory. Like, the government is hiding the truth. But Osman's reasoning isn't about some global, shadowy cabal. It's about managing middle-class factory workers.
Exactly. Osman says they signed non-disclosure agreements and hid the tapes because the staff was deeply prone to superstition. If that tape leaked to the factory floor, the narrative wouldn't be, oh, fascinating, let's bring in quantum physicists to study this multidimensional overlap.
No, the narrative would be, the plant is cursed by demons, we are all going to die.
Exactly. The workers would strike, panic would ensue, and the business would collapse.
So the irony is that human fear is actually the primary mechanism suppressing scientific discovery. When we encounter the inexplicable, we don't pull out a microscope. We grab a pitchfork or we drop to our knees.
Which perfectly sets up Osman's next major point. He explores why we drop to our knees. If these entities, these luminous, highly evolved, higher frequency beings actually exist and occasionally interact with our dimension, why does human rationality evaporate the second we see them?
To explain this, he uses one of the best pop culture analogies I've ever heard. He brings up a classic 1980s South African comedy film called The Gods Must Be Crazy.
It is a brilliant psychological parallel. For listeners who haven't seen the film, the plot centers around an isolated tribe in the Kalahari Desert. They have lived for millennia with zero contact with the outside world. One day, a pilot in a small airplane throws an empty glass Coca-Cola bottle out the window. It lands in the middle of the tribe.
And because they have absolutely no contextual framework for what glass is or what manufacturing is or what an airplane is, they deduce the only logical conclusion available to them. It is a mystical artifact dropped directly from the heavens by the gods. Later in the film, the tribe encounters a white man of Dutch descent for the first time. Again, they have no framework for his skin color, his height, or his bizarre clothing. So what do? They assume he is a god and they bow down to worship him.
It perfectly illustrates the awe response. When the human brain encounters a massive, insurmountable knowledge gap, when it is confronted with a phenomenon it cannot categorize, it defaults to awe and worship. It is a protective psychological reflex.
Osman maps this exact reflex onto human encounters with the unseen realm. He specifically brings up Devi Tara, a central figure in Tibetan Buddhism. She is considered a highly evolved, spiritually empowered being, a goddess, or Devi, who actively intervenes to save people in modern-day physical and energetic emergencies. Osman says, imagine you are walking down the street and the veil suddenly drops. A being like Devi Tara appears in front of you. She is effulgent, glowing with a breathtaking luminescence, radiating a frequency of pure, overwhelming, unconditional love that instantly calms your nervous system. As a normal human being with limited sensory hardware, what is your immediate physical reaction going to be?
Your knees are going to buckle. You are going to fall down and worship it.
Right. If a tribe worships a human just because he's wearing a weird shirt and flew in a metal tube, of course a modern human is going to worship a being made of literal glowing energy.
So what does this all mean for our theology? Osman approaches this human reflex with profound pluralism and compassion. He argues that the ultimate creator, the absolute source code of the universe, is so vast, infinite, and mathematically incomprehensible that direct, unmediated interaction is physically and psychologically impossible for a human brain. We would short circuit. So perhaps the creator designed a system of divine play.
I love that concept, divine play. Rainn Wilson actually touched on this pluralistic approach on his podcast, Soul Boom. He had Reza Aslan on, and they talked about how humans have always used different metaphors and interfaces to interact with the divine.
Yes. The universe knows we need an interface. Swami Sivananda talked about this too, how deities are forms chosen by the formless to help the human mind focus. We need something vaguely relatable, something with a face or a recognizable emotional frequency to interact with. So the devas, the angels, the luminous beings act as step-down transformers. They translate the infinite into a frequency we can actually survive experiencing.
And Osman's point is crucial here. We should not judge people for worshiping them. Falling to your knees in front of Devi Tara doesn't mean you are rejecting the ultimate creator. It means you are interacting with the absolute highest frequency of love your specific nervous system can currently process.
It's like looking at a stunning stained glass window in a cathedral. You are crying because the colors are so beautiful and you are marveling at the artistry of the glass. But the only reason the window is glowing in the first place is because the sun, the ultimate distant source of light, is shining through it. You aren't denying the existence of the sun by appreciating the intermediary window.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The intermediary is the only way you can perceive the light without going blind. But what's fascinating here is how violently this tolerant, pluralistic view collides with orthodox religious dogma. And Osman wades straight into the deepest waters of that conflict within his own tradition.
He does, and just to reiterate for you listening, our rule on this deep dive is strict impartiality. We are not theologians, and we aren't taking sides on religious doctrine. We are simply analyzing Osman's arguments as presented in the source material.
Absolutely. So Osman outlines a severe theological clash within Islam. He describes how many Muslims will travel to the grave sites of the Prophet's descendants, like Hussein, who are viewed as highly powerful, spiritually elevated beings. They pray at these graves, specifically asking these beings to intercede on their behalf.
Which, anthropologically speaking, is a massive part of human history. Intercessory prayer-asking saints, ancestors, or devas for help exists in almost every culture on Earth.
But Osman notes that extreme Orthodox practitioners fiercely condemn this. They argue that asking anything unseen for help, whether it's an angel, a saint, or a deceased master, is a direct violation of monotheism. It is pure idol worship. They insist that a true believer must bypass the entire hierarchy and ask only the ultimate God for absolutely everything.
And Osman's rebuttal to this extreme dogma is easily the most provocative and blunt statement in the entire lecture.
It stopped me in my tracks. Osman simply says, God is not your dog to do menial tasks.
It's jarring, but we have to look at the mechanics of what he considers a menial task.
He spells it out clearly. He means the daily grind of human existence. Passing a university calculus exam, trying to win a local city council election, trying to navigate a supply chain issue in your small business, or even wanting to balance your energy to become more charismatic and attract a romantic partner.
Osman is arguing that the ultimate creator of multiple dimensions and billions of galaxies is far too vast to be micromanaging your Tuesday afternoon algebra test. However, sticking strictly to his cosmic org chart framework, he claims there are specific energetic entities, specific sound frequency mantras, and specific deities whose literal function within the universe is to manage those localized worldly mechanics.
Right, so you can invoke them to enhance your memory for the test or to dissolve energetic obstacles in your business. Okay, I have to push back hard here because this is where the system starts to feel a little uncomfortable for me. If I am using a sacred mantra, or invoking a higher dimensional entity just to pass an exam or get a date on Friday night, aren't I just spiritualizing my own gross materialism? Like, shouldn't spirituality be about transcending the ego in the material world, not just hacking the universe to get a promotion at the bank? Why not just sit down, open the textbook, and study?
That is the ultimate critique of functional spirituality, and it's completely valid. But Osman actually anticipates this exact pushback. He doesn't view the material and the spiritual as opposing forces. He views them as a continuum. He explicitly states that if you invoke a deity to make you charismatic so you can find a partner, you cannot just sit in your basement. You still have to read books, you still have to practice communication skills, you have to brush your teeth and go out into the world.
Ah, okay, so the mantra is not a magic wand that bypasses the laws of cause and effect.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics of how a mantra actually works in this framework. It's not a magic spell. It's closer to acoustic resonance and cymatics. When you chant a specific Sanskrit or Arabic syllable, you are creating a specific vibratory frequency in the body. That frequency interacts with your nervous system, potentially shifting your brain waves into an alpha or theta state, reducing cortisol, and removing subconscious energetic blockages that cause you to stutter or self-sabotage on a date.
Right, it's like what Dr. Russell Kennedy talks about on the Mel Robbins podcast regarding somatic healing. You have to change the body's alarm system. The mantra prepares the soil perfectly, but you still have to physically plant the seed and water it.
Exactly. Deepak Chopra talks about this heavily on Lewis Howes' School of Greatness podcast when discussing the concept of metahuman consciousness. You use these ancient technologies to optimize your consciousness, but you still take physical action in the physical world.
Osman calls it extreme utilization. If you have a textbook, read it. If you have a mantra that tunes your nervous system to retain information faster, chant it. Why would you deliberately limit your toolkit? He uses a supermarket analogy to highlight the hypocrisy of the orthodox view. He says, if you truly believe you must only rely directly on God without any intermediaries, then you shouldn't go to the doctor when you are sick. You shouldn't go to work to earn a paycheck. You shouldn't go to the supermarket to buy food. You should just sit in an empty, dark room, pray, and wait for God to materialize a loaf of bread directly into your hands.
It's a devastating logical trap. We happily rely on thousands of physical intermediaries. Farmers, truck drivers, supply chain logistics, grocery store clerks just eat an apple. We never consider that a betrayal of God. Osman is simply asking, why is it a theological crime to use energetic intermediaries to navigate our subtle obstacles when we rely on physical intermediaries to survive every second of the day?
It is an incredibly compelling argument for a pluralistic, open-source worldview. But we have to address the shadow side of this. Because if we accept that this unseen ecosystem exists and that it has mechanics and laws, we have to acknowledge that not all unseen intermediaries are benevolent devas radiating unconditional love. Some of them are highly dangerous.
Yes. We are taking a hard left turn here, moving away from the effulgent, higher frequency realms and dropping down into the dense, murky, lower frequencies of the astral plane.
Osman drops a detail so shocking I had to rewind the source material twice to make sure I heard him correctly. He states, as a matter of objective fact, that there is a specific sect operating in Indonesia right now that actively hunts and traps lower-frequency entities.
Yeah.
He refers to them as evil spirits or jinn. And they don't just banish them, they trap these entities inside physical glass bottles.
And to make it even more surreal, they commercialize them. They sell these bottled entities.
Yes. You can buy one. He explains that people travel to Indonesia, track down this sect, and exchange money for a bottle containing a live, energetic entity. It is essentially framed as buying a contracted spiritual slave to do your dirty work.
But Osman highlights a chilling mechanistic detail about how these transactions actually work. If you buy one of these bottles, the entity inside does not view itself as your subjugated slave. They operate on strict, binding, universal laws of equivalent exchange. The entity views it as a two-way business contract. It will agree to manipulate dense energies for you, maybe causing harm to a rival or bringing you illicit wealth, but it absolutely requires a payment of energy from you in return.
And usually in these traditions, that payment is your health, your sanity, or your life force. It is a supernatural contract, and Osman presents it with zero theatricality. He treats it like discussing the dangers of handling radioactive material. In fact, he issues a direct empirical challenge to hardcore skeptics.
The microscope challenge.
Right. He says, you want proof. You think the spiritual realm is just psychological projection and fairy tales? Fine. Book a flight to Indonesia. Buy one of these bottles, bring it back to a sterile laboratory, put the bottle under an electron microscope, crack the seal, and scientifically observe what happens when that dense frequency is unleashed into the room.
It is the ultimate, mess around and find out challenge for a pure materialist. And he grounds this in our cultural zeitgeist, too.
He points to Hollywood blockbusters like Poltergeist and The Exorcist. He readily admits that the movies are dramatized, sensationalized narratives designed to sell popcorn. But he insists that if you strip away the Hollywood CGI and investigate the actual historical, documented cases of possession and poltergeist activity those scripts are based on, you will find a consistent, terrifying starting point for researching real phenomena. Things actually do go bump in the night, and they leave measurable physical wreckage behind.
If we step back and analyze why Osman includes this terrifying Indonesian bottle anecdote, it's not because he wants you to go dabble in dark arts. It serves a crucial structural purpose in his overarching thesis. He is trying to establish that the unseen realm is an objective, mechanical reality. It is not a metaphor. It is an ecosystem governed by immutable laws.
Right, it's physics.
Exactly. It has hierarchies, it has contracts, it has varying densities of frequency, and it has severe, tangible consequences. Just as the physical law of gravity will crush you if you step off a 10-story building with no parachute, there are energetic laws that will absolutely destroy your nervous system if you recklessly engage with lower frequency jinn. The spiritual world isn't a safe, fluffy playground. It has teeth.
It has teeth, it has professors, it has pediatricians, and it has alien entities caught on CCTV cameras. What an absolutely wild, paradigm-shifting journey this has been. I mean, we started with a sick baby and a fever, detoured through the extreme nervous system rewiring of Kundalini, explored the quantum mechanics of multidimensional deities, debated the strict confines of Islamic theology, and ended up analyzing the contractual physics of bottled Indonesian spirits.
It is a massive intellectual and spiritual landscape. And what makes it so compelling is that Osman doesn't ask you to believe any of it on blind faith. He demands that you test the mechanics yourself.
So as we bring this all home for you, the listener, how do we synthesize a worldview this vast?
I think the most beautiful and actionable synthesis of Osman, the blind Muslim yogi's framework, is that the universe is infinitely more collaborative than we have been taught. It is not a sterile, empty void cleanly divided between an unreachable, demanding God and a struggling, isolated human. It is a vast, teeming, vibrant ecosystem of frequencies, helpers, protocols, and entities. Seeking help from a specialized Sanskrit mantra to calm your mind, or invoking a Devi for protection, or utilizing a bioenergy healer is no more a betrayal of the ultimate creator than hiring a master plumber is a betrayal of the architect who designed the blueprint of your house. They are all just integral, specialized components of a perfectly functioning system.
It is a message of ultimate radical open-mindedness. Whether you are a devout Orthodox believer in a specific religion, a strict atheist who only trusts the scientific method, or even, as Osman casually notes in the source, a practicing Satanist, because he explicitly states that he actively treats and learns from Satanist clients with total, non-judgmental curiosity. The core takeaway from this deep dive is pluralism. Stop judging how other people interface with reality. Stop panicking when the universe presents you with data you don't understand. And start utilizing every single tool, both seen and unseen, that is available to you to optimize your human experience.
And practically speaking, you have tools available right now.
Yes. And speaking of utilizing tools, I want to remind you one last time, if this deep dive sparked your curiosity and you want to test these energetic waters yourself in a safe, guided, highly structured way, go check out Osman's free 5-minute program at yogawellness786.com. He designed it to bypass the dogma and deliver immediate, observable shifts in your baseline energy. It is a brilliant starting point.
As we close the books on this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought, something to mull over as you transition back into the physical demands of your day. Osman spent 54 years looking at the world exactly the way you and I do. Then, he lost his physical sight. He lives entirely in darkness. Yet he claims he sees a far wider, richer, and infinitely more complex spectrum of reality now than he ever did when his eyes worked perfectly. If our physical eyes are precisely the biological mechanism that keeps our consciousness stubbornly locked onto the dense, mundane, material world, what unseen helpers, what multidimensional solutions, or what subtle energetic lifelines might be standing right next to you at this very moment, simply waiting for you to close your eyes, quiet your mind, and finally ask for their help.
Think about that the next time you feel completely alone with a problem you can't solve. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the boundaries of your reality and stay insanely curious. We'll catch you next time.